You're lying in bed at 2 a.m. when you hear it. A single, rhythmic drip from the kitchen faucet that everyone else in the house has managed to ignore for weeks. While they sleep, your brain is already mentally disassembling the compression valve and cross-referencing O-ring sizes before you've even fully opened your eyes. To most people, that sound is a minor annoyance to be tuned out. But for you, it's a system in distress, a gap between what is and what should be that creates a low-level cognitive itch that simply won't go away. This isn't just a habit or a way to save a few bucks. It is the architecture of a specific kind of mind. Researchers use the term systemizing to describe this involuntary drive to analyze, understand, and construct the rules governing how things work. Whether it's a literal engine, a failing workflow at the office, or a recipe that keeps collapsing on the third step, the fixer's brain is constantly mapping inputs to outputs and cause to effect. You don't see a broken object as a source of stress. You see it as an invitation to engage with the unknown, a fundamental difference in how you relate to the world compared to the average person. There is a documented cognitive trait known as the need for cognition, which is the tendency to actively seek out and find joy in complex thinking. For the fixer, the diagnostic phase, the quiet time spent turning a part over in your hands and forming hypotheses, is actually more rewarding than the moment the repair is finished. This is why you might find yourself in a garage on a Saturday morning, knuckles scraped in grease under your fingernails, working on a lawnmower that could be replaced for $60. Everyone around you might think you're being stubborn or cheap, but what they're missing is the IKEA effect, a psychological phenomenon where we assign significantly more value to things we have built or repaired ourselves. The hand that fixed the object becomes entangled with it. You've been inside it. You know its history, and that creates a sense of authorship that a store-bought replacement can never replicate. This drive is powered by what psychologists call mastery motivation, a form of internal drive where the external reward is almost incidental. A fixer working alone in a silent workshop gets the same deep satisfaction as one working in front of a crowd because the audience was never the point. The point is the system functioning again. This orientation often stems from self-efficacy, a concept developed by Albert Bandura at Stanford, which describes a person's deep-seated belief in their own capacity to produce specific outcomes. It isn't something you're born with. It's built through small, repeated mastery experiences where you attempted something difficult and succeeded. Every leaking pipe you stopped and every appliance you brought back to life reinforced the belief that the world yields to patient, methodical attention. This perspective creates a high internal locus of control, meaning you believe your actions, rather than luck or external forces, primarily shape your life. When a crisis hits, you don't catastrophize because catastrophizing requires the belief that a situation is beyond your influence, a belief you constitutionally reject. Instead, you act, you adjust, and you intervene. This resilience often traces back to childhoods where self-reliance was required early, creating a sense of competence that developmental psychologists have found to be a major protective factor against adversity. However, this strength carries a hidden, invisible cost. Because you handle things so thoroughly and rarely ask for help, people often assume you don't need it. Your competence makes your own needs illegible to those around you. They see the grease on your hands, but miss the fact that you might be struggling under the weight of being the one who always has the answers. What many fixers actually want isn't for someone to take the tool out of their hand, but for someone to simply notice the effort and stand beside them while they work. There is also a deeper, almost moral layer to this psychology that connects us to the past. Many people who prefer to fix rather than replace are operating on an emotional frequency passed down from generations who lived through the Great Depression, where resources were finite and discarding something was a last resort. To you, repair is a form of loyalty. It's a statement that history and memory are worth more than the convenience of planned obsolescence. You are participating in a psychological revolt against a culture that says replacement is progress, choosing instead the dignity of restoration. Ultimately, the mechanical systems you fix are honest. They have logic and rules that will give you real feedback if you look long enough. People, however, are messy, and the fixer's greatest challenge is often realizing that some things in life aren't broken. They are just part of the human experience, and cannot be solved with a wrench. But that doesn't stop the instinct. The next time you reach for a broken object, realize that your pull toward understanding how it works is one of the most honest expressions of who you are. You are a person who looks at a broken world and believes, with evidence-based faith, that things can function better than they do right now. If you recognized your own hands or your own heart in this description, it's time to stop letting your internal systems run on autopilot while you fix everything else. I've put a link in the pinned comment to a resource designed specifically for the fixer brain, a set of guides to help you diagnose and repair the mental backlogs, sleep patterns, and focus issues you've been ignoring while you were busy taking care of the world. Stop just filing the information away and start the repair process on yourself. Subscribe and hit the bell to join a community of people who know that the most important thing you'll ever fix is your own relationship with the world. This isn't just a habit or a way to save a few bucks. This perspective creates a high internal locus of control, meaning you believe your actions, rather than luck or external forces, primarily shape your life. There is also a profound intergenerational layer to this drive. Many people who prefer to repair rather than replace are operating on a frequency passed down from those who lived through the Great Depression or World War II. In that era, resources were finite, and the correct response to a broken item was to understand it well enough to bring it back to life. This emotional programming survived the transition to modern abundance, passed down through the silent gesture of a father handing a tool to a child without saying a word. Through these moments, children learned that restoration is a form of loyalty and that the history inside an object is worth more than a new version purchased at a store. Ultimately, these childhood experiences create a high internal locus of control, where you grow up believing that your own actions, not luck or external forces, shape your life.